They made the blind alien prince sit alone at every meal. Then a human servant boy became his eyes. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the gleaming halls of the celestial palace of Tavona, a young prince sat in isolation, surrounded by silence and darkness that only he could feel. Prince Zarek of the Tavonian Empire sat motionless at his small table in the corner of the grand dining hall. The sounds of laughter, conversation, and the clinking of utensils echoed around him, yet none were directed toward him. At 17 cycles old, the Tavonian prince had never known what it was like to be truly seen. Born blind due to a rare genetic mutation, Zarek lacked the bioluminescent eyes that were the pride of his species. Where other Tavonians had brilliant glowing orbs that shimmered with colors corresponding to their emotions, Zarek's eyes remained dull and unseeing, a constant reminder of his imperfection. The Tavonian royal court considered his blindness a mark of weakness, a flaw unbecoming of the imperial bloodline. Though he was third in line to the throne, the court officials, and even his own family treated him as if he were invisible. They claimed it was for his own protection and dignity, but Zarek knew the truth. They were ashamed. "Your meal has been prepared according to royal standards, Your Highness," announced a servant, placing a plate before him and departing swiftly. Zarek nodded, though he knew the servant had already gone. He reached forward carefully, fingers searching for his utensils. Finding them, he began the familiar ritual of eating alone, counting the distance from plate to mouth with practiced precision. One slip would only confirm what everyone already believed, that he was incapable, a burden to the great Tavonian Empire. Across the vast expanse of space, on a small blue planet called Earth, a boy named Tyler Grant prepared for a journey that would change his life forever. At 16, Tyler had been selected as part of Earth's Student Ambassador program to work at the Tavonian Royal Palace. Earth, having only recently joined the Galactic Commonwealth, was eager to strengthen diplomatic ties with the ancient and powerful Tavonian Empire. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Tyler's mother asked, folding his clothes and placing them in his travel case. "You'll be gone for a whole year." Tyler nodded, running his hand through his sandy brown hair. "It's the opportunity of a lifetime, Mom. Plus, it'll look amazing on my university applications." What he didn't say was how desperate he was to escape the suffocating memories of his father's death the year before. The accident that had claimed his dad's life had left Tyler and his mother struggling both emotionally and financially. The ambassador program offered generous compensation that would help his mom keep their small apartment. "I just worry about you being so far away," she said, her eyes glistening. "I'll be fine," Tyler assured her with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Humans are valued for our adaptability, remember? That's why they wanted us in the program." The journey to Tavona took 3 weeks aboard an interstellar transport ship. Tyler spent most of that time studying Tavonian culture, history, and basic language phrases. He learned that Tavonians were a tall, slender humanoid species with silvery skin that reflected light like polished metal. Their most distinctive feature was their large, luminescent eyes that glowed with changing colors based on their emotional state: blue for calm, purple for curiosity, green for pleasure, yellow for concern, orange for excitement, and red for anger or passion. The Tavonian Empire spanned dozens of star systems and had been a dominant force in galactic politics for millennia. Earth, by comparison, was a newcomer, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 70 years ago. Humans were still finding their place in the galactic community, often serving as intermediaries or workers in various capacities across alien civilizations. When Tyler finally arrived at the capital city of Luminora, he was awestruck. Towering crystal spires reached toward the twin moons, refracting the light of Tavona's golden sun into countless rainbows that danced across the cityscape. The royal palace stood at the center, a magnificent structure of gleaming metal and luminescent stone that seemed to float above an artificial lake. "Impressive, isn't it?" said Eliza Cooper, one of the program coordinators who had traveled with the human delegation. "The palace was built 10,000 years ago and has been continuously expanded since then. It's considered one of the wonders of the galactic core." Tyler could only nod, too overwhelmed to speak. Everything was so different from Earth. The architecture, the atmosphere, even the quality of light seemed alien and magical. The human delegation was escorted to their quarters within the palace's diplomatic wing. Tyler would be sharing a suite with 3 other human students, all assigned to different roles within the palace. After a brief orientation, they were given their assignments. Tyler's heart sank when he learned he would be working in the palace kitchens. "Don't look so disappointed," Eliza said, noticing his expression. "The royal kitchens are where you'll learn the most about Tavonian culture. Food is central to their social hierarchy." Tyler forced a smile. "I was hoping for something more diplomatic." "Every role here is diplomatic," Eliza replied firmly. "Remember, you represent Earth with every action you take. Now get some rest. Your duties begin at first light tomorrow." The royal kitchen was a hive of activity, with servants of various species working under the watchful eyes of the Tavonian head chef, Master Kellner. The massive room gleamed with polished metal surfaces and strange cooking apparatuses that Tyler had never seen before. "You're late, human," Master Kellner barked when Tyler arrived, his eyes glowing a faint orange. "Service standards in this palace have existed for thousands of years, and they will not change for your convenience." "I'm sorry, sir," Tyler replied, bowing his head as they had been instructed to do before Tavonian superiors. "It won't happen again." Master Kellner stared at him for a moment, his luminescent eyes studying Tyler with intense scrutiny. "See that it doesn't. You've been assigned to the preparation of fruits and vegetables. Report to servant Lena for instructions." Lena, a short Tavonian female with kind eyes that glowed a gentle blue, showed Tyler how to clean, peel, and cut the exotic produce that would be served at the royal tables. The work was tedious but not difficult, and Tyler found himself falling into a comfortable rhythm. "So, do you ever get to interact with the royal family?" Tyler asked Lena during a brief lull in their work. Lena's eyes flickered to yellow. "Most servants do not. Only the highest-ranking attendants serve the royal family directly." "What are they like?" "The royals, I mean." "It is not our place to discuss the royal family," Lena replied, her eyes now shifting toward orange. "Focus on your tasks, human. Curiosity beyond your station can lead to trouble." Tyler nodded and returned to his work, silently chastising himself for being too forward. He would have to be more careful about Tavonian protocols if he wanted to survive his year here. Days turned into weeks, and Tyler gradually adjusted to life in the palace. The work was hard, the hours long, but he found a quiet satisfaction in mastering the preparation of Tavonian cuisine. He even began to recognize the subtle nuances of flavor that were so important to Tavonian dining customs. One morning, Master Kellner approached Tyler with an unusual assignment. "Human, you will prepare a special meal today. Prince Zarek requires a specific preparation due to his condition." Tyler perked up at this new task. "Prince Zarek? I don't think I've heard of him." Master Kellner's eyes flashed briefly red before settling back to yellow. "The third prince. He dines separately from the court. His meal must be arranged in a specific pattern, clockwise, with each item placed at a precise position." He handed Tyler a diagram. "Follow this exactly. Any deviation could cause the prince discomfort." Looking at the diagram, Tyler realized it was designed to help someone navigate their meal without seeing it. "Is Prince Zarek blind?" he asked before he could stop himself. Master Kellner stiffened. "The prince's conditions are not for you to question. Simply follow your instructions." Tyler prepared the meal exactly as directed, arranging the various foods according to the diagram. When he finished, he felt a surge of pride at the care he'd taken with this special assignment. "I'll deliver this to the prince," he offered, eager to see who this mysterious royal was. "You most certainly will not," Master Kellner replied sharply. "Prince Zarek's meals are delivered by designated servants only. Return to your regular duties." Disappointed but undeterred, Tyler's curiosity about Prince Zarek grew. Over the next few days, he gathered scraps of information from hushed conversations among the palace staff. The third prince was indeed blind, a condition considered deeply shameful among Tavonians, whose bioluminescent eyes were central to their communication and social standing. Despite being of royal blood, Zarek was kept separate from court activities and rarely acknowledged in public. "He's brilliant, though," whispered one of the older servants to Tyler when they were alone. I've heard he has a perfect memory and can speak 12 galactic languages. But the court treats him like he's not even there. Tyler found himself thinking about the prince often, imagining what it must be like to be both royal and rejected. One evening, unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Tyler decided to observe the prince's dinner service. He positioned himself in a service corridor with a view of the grand dining hall, watching as the court dined in splendor at the main tables, while a solitary figure sat at a small table in the corner. Prince Zarek was younger than Tyler had expected, probably close to his own age. The prince had the characteristic silvery skin of the Tavonians, but where others of his race had brilliantly glowing eyes, his remained dull and fixed straight ahead. He ate methodically, his slender fingers moving with practiced precision from plate to mouth. What struck Tyler most was the silence that surrounded the prince. No one approached his table, no one engaged him in conversation. It was as if an invisible barrier separated him from the rest of the court. Even the servant who delivered his meal placed it before him and left without a word. For several nights, Tyler watched this same scene play out, feeling an increasing sense of injustice on behalf of the isolated prince. Then, one evening, disaster struck. Tyler was working late in the kitchen when he heard a commotion from the dining hall. Peering through the service door, he saw Prince Zarek standing beside his table, his clothing soaked with what appeared to be wine. A courtier stood nearby, his eyes glowing red with feigned distress. "1,000 apologies, Your Highness," the courtier was saying, though his tone carried no sincerity. "I did not see you there." Zarek's face remained impassive, but his hands trembled slightly. "Of course you didn't," he replied, his voice soft but clear. "No one ever does." The dining hall had fallen silent, all eyes on the scene, but no one moved to help the prince. Tyler watched as Zarek attempted to regain his seat, his hand groping blindly for the chair that had been pushed out of place during the collision. Without thinking, Tyler rushed into the hall. "Allow me, Your Highness," he said, quickly righting the chair and guiding the prince's hand to its back. A collective gasp went through the court at this breach of protocol. Servants did not approach royalty uninvited, especially not human servants. Zarek tilted his head, surprise evident on his features. "You're human," he stated, not as a question but as an observation. "I can tell by your voice and scent. What is your name?" "Tyler Grant, Your Highness," Tyler replied, acutely aware of the hundreds of glowing eyes fixed upon him. "I work in the royal kitchens." "Tyler Grant," Zarek repeated, as if committing the name to memory. "Thank you for your assistance." Master Kellner appeared at Tyler's side, his eyes blazing red. "Return to your post immediately, human," he hissed. "Your presumption will be dealt with later." Tyler bowed to the prince and retreated to the kitchen, his heart pounding. He knew he had violated protocol, but he couldn't regret helping someone who so clearly needed it. That night, Tyler was summoned to the office of Lord Vexer, the royal chamberlain. He prepared himself for dismissal, possibly even deportation back to Earth. Lord Vexer was a tall, imposing Tavonian with eyes that glowed a cold blue. "You have created quite a stir, human," he said, his voice laden with disapproval. "Approaching Prince Zarek without permission is a serious breach of court etiquette." "I apologize, my lord," Tyler replied, keeping his eyes downcast as was customary. "I saw someone in need and acted without thinking." "Indeed. Humans are known for their impulsivity," Lord Vexer remarked dryly. "However, Prince Zarek has made a most unusual request. He has asked that you be reassigned to his personal service." Tyler's head snapped up in surprise. "Me? But I have no training as a personal attendant." "Which I pointed out to His Highness," Lord Vexer continued, his eyes shifting to yellow. However, the prince was insistent. "It seems your directness made an impression on him." Tyler was stunned. "What would my duties involve?" "You would assist Prince Zarek with his daily activities, particularly during meals. You would essentially be his eyes when required." Lord Vexer's tone made it clear he found the arrangement distasteful. "Understand that this assignment is temporary. At the first sign of incompetence or impropriety, you will be returned to Earth immediately." "I understand," Tyler said, trying to contain his excitement. This was far more interesting than kitchen work, and he felt an inexplicable desire to help the isolated prince. "Report to Prince Zarek's chambers tomorrow morning." You will be briefed on his schedule and requirements. Lord Vexer waved a dismissive hand. You may go. As Tyler left the Chamberlain's office, he couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. Becoming the personal attendant to a blind alien prince was hardly what he had expected when he signed up for the ambassador program. Tyler arrived at Prince Zarek's chambers the next morning, nervous but determined to do well. The prince's quarters were located in a quiet wing of the palace, far from the busy central areas. A stern-faced Tavonian guard stood at attention outside the ornate door. Human Tyler Grant, reporting as requested, Tyler announced, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The guard's eyes glowed yellow as he examined Tyler before stepping aside. The prince is expecting you. Tyler entered to find himself in an antechamber decorated with intricate metallic sculptures and tapestries depicting Tavonian history. A door at the far end opened, and an elderly Tavonian servant emerged. I am Marek, senior attendant to Prince Zarek. He introduced himself, his eyes a calm blue. The prince will receive you shortly. First, there are things you must understand about serving His Highness. Marek explained that despite his blindness, Prince Zarek had developed extraordinary compensatory abilities. His hearing was acute enough to identify individuals by their footsteps, and his memory was flawless. He could navigate familiar spaces without assistance, but required guidance in new environments or crowded situations. The prince values clarity and honesty, Marek continued. Do not pity him and never lie about what you see. When describing something, be precise but not verbose. He detests flowery language that obscures meaning. Tyler nodded, taking mental notes. What about the court? How should I handle interactions with other nobles? Marek's eyes darkened slightly. You will find that many at court prefer to pretend the prince doesn't exist. Some find his condition uncomfortable. Your job is not to change their minds, but to ensure the prince can function with dignity despite their attitudes. Before Marek could continue, a voice called from the inner chamber. Is that my new attendant I hear, Marek? Yes, Your Highness, Marek replied, turning toward the door. The human Tyler Grant has arrived. Send him in. Marek gestured for Tyler to enter, and he stepped into Prince Zarek's private study. The room was unlike anything Tyler had expected. Rather than visual decorations, the space was filled with objects of various textures, smooth stones, rough fabrics, intricate wooden carvings that seemed designed to be experienced through touch. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and the air carried a subtle, pleasant fragrance. Prince Zarek sat in a chair by a large window, sunlight illuminating his silvery skin. Up close, Tyler could see that the prince was lean but not frail, with high cheekbones and features that would have been considered handsome by both human and Tavonian standards. His unseeing eyes were a milky white, with just the faintest hint of luminescence, nothing like the brightly glowing orbs of other Tavonians. Approach, Tyler Grant of Earth, the prince said, tilting his head slightly as if listening to Tyler's movements. Let me get a sense of you. Tyler walked forward and stopped a respectful distance from the prince's chair. Good morning, Your Highness. Zarek smiled slightly. Your voice is different today, less rushed. Are you nervous? A little, Tyler admitted. I've never been a personal attendant before, especially not to a prince. And I've never had a human attendant. We will learn together. Zarek extended his hand. May I? Understanding the request, Tyler placed his hand in the prince's. Zarek's fingers were cool and smooth as they explored Tyler's hand, tracing the lines of his palm and the contours of his fingers. Humans have such textured skin, Zarek commented. Tavonian skin is too smooth, too uniform. It tells less of a story. He released Tyler's hand. Tell me, why did you help me yesterday? It was a significant risk to your position. Tyler considered his answer carefully. Where I come from, when someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter who they are. A simple philosophy, Zarek replied with a hint of amusement, yet one seemingly absent in my father's court. He stood up, his movements graceful and assured within the familiar space of his chambers. I have a busy schedule today. There's a historical lecture I wish to attend, followed by a music recital. Both events are in public spaces where I rarely venture. Are you prepared to guide me? Yes, Your Highness, Tyler replied, determined to prove himself worthy of the prince's trust. Then let us proceed. And Tyler? Yes. I prefer to be called Zarek when we are alone. Court formalities grow tiresome when they're merely a facade for exclusion. Tyler smiled. As you wish. Zarek. That first day with Prince Zarek was an education in palace politics. As they made their way to the historical lecture, Tyler noticed how courtiers and servants alike reacted to the prince's presence. Some averted their eyes, while others stared with barely concealed curiosity or disdain. No one addressed the prince directly unless absolutely necessary. Zarek navigated the corridors with Tyler's guidance, his hand resting lightly on Tyler's forearm. Tyler described their surroundings in clear, concise terms as Marek had instructed, warning of steps or obstacles and noting who they passed. Lord Travis just passed us on the left, Tyler murmured. His eyes flashed yellow when he saw you. Then he looked away quickly. Ah, Travis, Zarek replied quietly. He proposed his daughter as a potential match for me last year, then withdrew the offer when reminded of my deficiency. He finds it difficult to look at me now. Tyler was shocked by this casual cruelty, but kept his voice neutral. His loss, I'd say. This earned him a small smile from the prince. Indeed. What else do you observe? As they continued, Tyler described the changing architecture of the palace, the behavior of those they encountered, and small details that caught his attention. He found himself noticing things he might otherwise have missed, the subtle patterns of movement as people navigated the prince's presence, the whispered comments that followed in their wake. The historical lecture was held in a grand hall filled with nobles and scholars. When Zarek entered with Tyler at his side, a ripple of surprise moved through the assembled Tavonians. The prince rarely attended such public events. There's an empty row about 5 meters ahead, Tyler whispered. Left side of the central aisle. Zarek nodded, and they made their way to the seats. Tyler helped the prince get settled, then took the seat beside him. He was aware of the glowing eyes watching them, some with curiosity, others with disapproval. This lecturer has a tendency to drift into tangents, Zarek murmured. If you find yourself getting lost in the academic meanderings, don't worry. I'm more interested in the questions and discussions afterward. The lecture, delivered by a venerable Tavonian scholar, covered the ancient conflicts between the Tavonian Empire and the now extinct Krell Dominion. Tyler found it fascinating but dense with references to events and figures he'd never heard of. Beside him, Zarek listened intently, his head tilted slightly to better catch the lecturer's words. When the formal presentation concluded, the audience was invited to ask questions. To Tyler's surprise, Zarek raised his hand. A hush fell over the hall. Prince Zarek, the lecturer acknowledged, his eyes glowing purple with undisguised curiosity. We are honored by your presence. You have a question? Indeed, Scholar Venter, Zarek replied, his voice clear and confident. You mentioned that the decisive factor in the Battle of Corvus Nebula was the Krell's inability to detect our ships through the ionic clouds. However, historical records from the period indicate that Tavonian vessels of that era lacked the shielding necessary to withstand such conditions. Might it not be more accurate to say that both sides were effectively blind, and our victory came from better preparation for fighting without visual references? A murmur ran through the audience. The scholar's eyes flickered between yellow and purple as he considered the question. A most insightful observation, Your Highness, he finally responded. You are correct that traditional accounts may have oversimplified the tactical situation. Your analysis suggests a more nuanced understanding of the conflict. Zarek nodded in acknowledgement, and Tyler couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for the prince. He had just publicly demonstrated an intellectual acumen that challenged a respected scholar, all while those around him continued to underestimate him because of his blindness. As they left the lecture hall, Tyler noticed a change in how some of the attendees regarded the prince. There was still avoidance, still discomfort, but now tinged with something new, a reluctant respect. You impressed them, Tyler said as they walked toward the music recital. Perhaps, Zarek replied. But impressing them isn't my goal. Understanding our true history is. The Tavonian Empire has a habit of revising the past to flatter the present. Sometimes it takes someone who sees differently to perceive the truth. The music recital proved to be an even more revealing experience. Held in an acoustically perfect chamber with seating arranged in concentric circles around the performers, the event featured musicians from across the galaxy, playing both traditional and contemporary compositions. Music is where I am most at home, Zarek confided as they took their seats. Here, I need no eyes to appreciate the artistry. Tyler watched in fascination as the prince became fully immersed in the performances. Zarek's expression changed with each piece, reflecting emotions that seemed deeper and more nuanced than those displayed by the other Tavonians through their glowing eyes. During an intermission, a young female Tavonian approached them, her eyes shifting between blue and purple. "Prince Zarek," she said with a formal bow. "I am Lyra, daughter of Counselor Nevin. I wanted to tell you how much I appreciated your insights at the historical lecture." Zarek turned toward her voice, a look of pleasant surprise on his face. "Lady Lyra, your father's contributions to our agricultural policy have been most impressive. Do you share his interest in sustainable farming?" Yes, I do," she replied, clearly surprised that the prince knew of her family's work. "I'm currently researching adaptive crop systems for marginal environments. A vital field of study," Zarek said warmly. "Perhaps you would consider sharing your findings with me sometime? The applications for newly terraformed worlds could be significant." Lyra's eyes glowed green with pleasure. "It would be my honor, Your Highness." As she departed, Tyler noticed other young nobles watching the exchange with interest. The invisible barrier around the prince seemed slightly less impenetrable than before. "That went well," Tyler observed quietly. "Lyra's father is one of the few council members who treats me as a person rather than a problem," Zarek replied. "She has inherited his more progressive outlook. Small allies can make large differences, Tyler." By the end of that first day, Tyler was exhausted but exhilarated. Working with Prince Zarek was nothing like he had expected. The prince was intelligent, perceptive, and possessed a quiet dignity that stood in stark contrast to the petty politics of the court. That evening, Tyler guided Zarek to dinner in the grand dining hall. As usual, the prince was seated at his isolated table in the corner while the rest of the court dined at the main tables. This time, however, Tyler remained at his side. "Describe the scene for me," Zarek requested as they were served. Tyler surveyed the hall, noting the positioning of the various nobles and the subtle interactions between them. He described the elaborate decorations, the positioning of the royal family at the high table, and the undercurrents of conversation that flowed through the room. "The king and queen are seated at the center of the high table," Tyler narrated quietly. "The crown prince is to the king's right, engaged in conversation with a diplomat I don't recognize, tall, reptilian features, probably Saurian. The second prince is absent. The chamberlain keeps glancing our way, his eyes shifting between yellow and red. Lord Vexer disapproves of our arrangement," Zarek explained, carefully cutting a piece of food. "He believes it draws unwanted attention to my condition." "Does it bother you?" "The attention, I mean." Zarek considered this as he ate. "I have lived my entire life either ignored or observed as a curiosity. At least with you here, I understand what people are seeing and how they're reacting. There's power in that knowledge." As the meal progressed, Tyler continued his quiet narration, helping Zarek form a mental picture of the social dynamics playing out around them. Occasionally, Zarek would ask specific questions about a person's expression or posture, using the information to build a more complete understanding of the court's hidden currents. Toward the end of the meal, Tyler noticed something unexpected. Lady Lyra from the recital just entered with her father. She glanced our way, and her eyes glowed purple before she took her seat. "Interesting," Zarek remarked. "Curiosity. Perhaps our conversation made more of an impression than I realized." "She's still looking over occasionally," Tyler added. "And now she's saying something to her father." Sure enough, a few minutes later, Counselor Nevin and his daughter approached their table. The counselor was an older Tavonian with dignified features and eyes that glowed a steady blue. "Prince Zarek." He greeted with a formal bow that the prince couldn't see but would hear in the rustling of fabric. "My daughter spoke highly of your exchange at the recital. Would you permit us to join you?" A hush fell over the nearby tables. No one had voluntarily sat with the blind prince at meals within Tyler's memory. "Counselor Nevin, Lady Lyra," Zarek replied smoothly. "I would be honored by your company." As the counselor and his daughter seated themselves, Tyler caught sight of Lord Vexer watching from across the hall, his eyes glowing a deep red. Whatever the chamberlain's disapproval, something had shifted in the court's treatment of Prince Zarek, and Tyler couldn't help but feel he had played some small part in the change. Over the following weeks, Tyler and Zarek fell into a comfortable routine. Each morning, Tyler would arrive at the prince's chambers to help plan the day's activities. He would describe the weather, relay any important news from around the palace, and review Zarek's schedule. During public appearances, Tyler served as both guide and narrator, describing scenes and interactions that would otherwise be inaccessible to the prince. He learned to be concise, yet detailed, focusing on the information that Zarek found most valuable: facial expressions, subtle gestures, and the changing colors of Tavonian eyes that revealed emotional states the speakers might prefer to hide. "You're becoming quite the court observer," Zarek commented one day as they walked through the palace gardens. "You notice things even some Tavonians miss." "I guess being an outsider gives me a different perspective," Tyler replied. "Plus, when you're describing things for someone else, you start seeing details you might otherwise overlook." The gardens were one of Zarek's favorite places, filled with plants chosen for their fragrances and interesting textures rather than visual appeal. Tyler guided the prince to a bench beside a fountain, describing the water patterns as they changed and shifted. "My father used to bring me here when I was very young," Zarek said unexpectedly. "Before he fully understood the permanence of my condition, he would describe the palace, the people, the ceremonies I would someday participate in as a royal prince. When the court physicians confirmed my blindness was untreatable, his visits stopped." Tyler was silent, sensing that the prince rarely shared such personal memories. "He's not a cruel man," Zarek continued, "simply a product of a culture that values perfection and visible strength. In Tavonian society, emotions are displayed through our eyes. Without that ability, I am incomplete in ways that make my people uncomfortable." "That seems like their limitation, not yours," Tyler said carefully. Zarek smiled. "A very human perspective. Your species has always been remarkably adaptable, both physically and culturally. It's why you've integrated into galactic society so quickly despite your technological disadvantages." "I never thought of it that way," Tyler admitted. "On Earth, we still think of ourselves as playing catch-up with species like yours. Technologically, perhaps, but there are other forms of advancement." Zarek turned his face toward the sun, feeling its warmth. "Your first emperor." "President," Tyler corrected automatically, then winced. "Sorry, that was presumptuous." Zarek chuckled. "No, accuracy matters. Your first president, when Earth joined the Commonwealth, gave a speech that many found charming but inconsequential. He said that humanity's greatest strength was not in our achievements, but in our failures, in how we learned from them and helped others avoid similar mistakes. "I remember studying that speech in school," Tyler said. "It wasn't very popular back home. Some people thought it made us sound weak." "It was wisdom disguised as humility," Zarek replied. "The oldest civilizations in our galaxy have become rigid, resistant to change. They see adaptation as a form of defeat rather than survival. Humans understand something many of us have forgotten, that true strength lies in resilience, not perfection." As their conversation drifted to other topics, Tyler realized how much he had come to admire the prince. Despite a lifetime of isolation and subtle cruelty, Zarek remained thoughtful and kind, with a perspective that seemed to transcend the limitations of both his physical condition and his culture. The changes in how the court treated Prince Zarek were subtle but significant. The most noticeable difference was at mealtimes, where he was no longer entirely isolated. Counselor Nevin and his daughter became regular companions, and gradually, others began to join them. First scholars who appreciated the prince's intellectual contributions, then younger nobles who found his different perspective intriguing. Lord Vexor watched these developments with growing concern. The Chamberlain had spent years carefully managing the court's perception of the royal family, ensuring that Prince Zarek's unfortunate condition remained discreetly hidden in the shadows. The prince's increasing visibility threatened the carefully maintained image of Tavonian perfection. One afternoon, Tyler was summoned to the Chamberlain's office. Lord Vexor sat behind a massive desk of polished stone, his eyes glowing a cold blue as Tyler entered. "You have been serving Prince Zarek for nearly 2 months now," he began without preamble. "While your dedication is commendable, there are concerns about your influence." Tyler kept his expression neutral. May I ask what concerns specifically, my lord? The prince is becoming disruptively visible, Vexer replied, his eyes shifting toward yellow. His increased presence at court functions, the growing circle of nobles who engage with him. These changes disrupt established protocols. With respect, my lord, isn't Prince Zarek entitled to participate in court life? He is a royal prince, after all. Vexer's eyes flashed red briefly. You misunderstand your place, human. It is not for you to determine what is appropriate for a member of the royal family. Prince Zarek's condition requires special considerations. His increased visibility draws unwanted attention to imperfection within the royal bloodline. I'm simply helping him navigate the world as he chooses to experience it, Tyler countered, feeling a surge of protectiveness toward the prince. Your assignment was to assist with practical matters, not to encourage disruption of court traditions, Vexer said coldly. Consider this a formal warning. Guide the prince as required, but do not promote activities that place him unnecessarily in the public eye. The reputation of the Tavonian royal house is not a trivial matter. Tyler left the meeting seething with indignation, but also worried. Lord Vexer held considerable power, and crossing him could jeopardize not only Tyler's position, but potentially Zarek's fragile progress toward acceptance. When Tyler related the conversation to Zarek later that day, the prince listened thoughtfully, his expression revealing little. Vexer has always been protective of tradition, Zarek said when Tyler finished. He genuinely believes he's serving the Empire's best interests. By keeping you hidden away? Tyler couldn't keep the anger from his voice. That's not protection, it's prejudice. Perhaps both, Zarek replied calmly. Tavonian society has existed for millennia by maintaining certain ideals of perfection and order. My existence challenges those ideals. Change comes slowly to ancient cultures, Tyler. So we just do what he wants? Go back to you sitting alone and being ignored. Not at all, Zarek said with a small smile. We continue exactly as we have been, but with greater awareness of the resistance we face. Vexer cannot act openly against me. I am still a prince. But he can make life difficult for those who support me, including you. I'm not worried about myself, Tyler insisted. Then worry for my sake, Zarek replied. I've grown quite accustomed to your company and would prefer not to lose it to an unnecessary confrontation with the Chamberlain. The prince's gentle humor defused Tyler's anger, replacing it with determination. They would continue their work of changing perceptions, but perhaps with more strategic consideration. The opportunity to put this approach into practice came sooner than expected. A grand diplomatic reception was scheduled to welcome ambassadors from 12 newly joined Commonwealth worlds. Such events were the pinnacle of court life, showcasing Tavonian culture, power, and elegance to the galactic community. Traditionally, Prince Zarek was excluded from these high-profile functions, assigned instead to private meetings with minor officials or scholars who wouldn't be troubled by his condition. This time, however, he received a formal invitation, likely due to pressure from Counselor Nevin, who had been tasked with organizing the cultural aspects of the event. This is a significant opportunity, Zarek told Tyler as they prepared for the reception. Many of these ambassadors come from worlds where physical differences are viewed quite differently than they are here. Their presence may help shift perspectives among our own people. Tyler helped the prince select appropriate attire, formal robes in deep blue with silver trim, the colors of the royal house. As he described the outfit's appearance, he realized how much he had learned about Tavonian fashion and its symbolic significance. The silver embroidery forms the royal crest over your heart, Tyler explained. It catches the light when you move, drawing attention in a subtle but distinctive way. Perfect, Zarek replied with satisfaction. Visible enough to assert my position, not so ostentatious as to seem like overcompensation. Your eye for Tavonian aesthetics has improved dramatically. Tyler grinned. I've had a good teacher. The grand reception hall was transformed for the occasion, decorated with luminescent crystals and living light sculptures that pulsed with gentle colors. Diplomats and nobles from dozens of worlds mingled beneath floating orbs of light, creating an atmosphere of otherworldly elegance. As Tyler guided Zarek into the hall, he felt the now familiar shift in attention that the prince's presence created. Conversations paused, eyes turned toward them, some curious, others disapproving, a growing number simply accepting. The Earth ambassador is approaching from your right, Tyler murmured. Ambassador Chun, I believe. Her eyes show interest, no discomfort. Prince Zarek, the ambassador greeted warmly. I'm Helen Chun, representing Earth. It's an honor to meet you. Ambassador Chun, Zarek replied, inclining his head graciously. I believe you've already met my attendant, Tyler Grant. He speaks highly of Earth's diplomatic initiatives. Tyler has become something of a legend among our student ambassadors, Chin said with a smile. His assignment to your service has been noted as a particularly successful cultural exchange. I'm the beneficiary of that success, Zarek responded smoothly. Tyler's perspective has been invaluable. As the conversation continued, other diplomats joined them, drawn by the unusual sight of a Tavonian royal engaged in substantive discussion rather than formal pleasantries. Tyler observed with pride as Zarek navigated complex diplomatic questions with intelligence and charm, his blindness becoming almost incidental to the interactions. Across the room, Tyler noticed Lord Vexer watching with poorly concealed displeasure, his eyes glowing a steady red. Near him stood the king and queen, observing their son's unexpected social success with expressions that Tyler couldn't quite interpret. Your parents are watching you, Tyler whispered during a brief lull in the conversations. The king's eyes are shifting between blue and yellow. The queen's remain firmly yellow. Interesting, Zarek murmured. Calm uncertainty from my father, consistent concern from my mother. Better than I might have expected. As the evening progressed, Tyler guided Zarek through the crowded hall, introducing him to various dignitaries and describing the visual elements of the reception that he couldn't perceive. The prince was in his element, demonstrating a diplomatic acumen that impressed even those initially uncomfortable with his condition. During a musical interlude, Tyler noticed Lyra approaching with purpose, her eyes glowing green with excitement. Prince Zarek, she said, bowing formally. My father has arranged for a special presentation of Tavonian light sculpture that incorporates sound and fragrance elements. He thought you might particularly appreciate the multisensory approach. Would you care to join us? I would be delighted, Lady Lyra, Zarek replied warmly. Lead the way. As they followed Lyra to a smaller adjoining chamber, Tyler realized this was no casual invitation. Counselor Nevin stood near the entrance, along with several influential nobles and diplomats. The counselor had deliberately created an opportunity for Zarek to experience an art form usually inaccessible to him, while simultaneously positioning him among important figures in a more intimate setting. The presentation was remarkable, sculptures that emitted harmonious tones when approached, releasing subtle fragrances that complemented both the music and the changing light patterns. While most attendees experienced the art primarily visually, it had been designed to be fully appreciated through multiple senses. This is extraordinary, Zarek commented, his hands extended to feel the air currents created by the moving sculptures. The interplay between sound and scent creates a spatial awareness that's almost like seeing. The artist, a renowned Tavonian sculptor, beamed at the prince's insight. That was precisely my intention, Your Highness. Art should transcend the limitations of any single sense. A philosophy with applications beyond art, perhaps, added a Mindoran diplomat, her tentacled appendages shifting thoughtfully. Many species experience reality through entirely different sensory arrays. True understanding requires moving beyond our native perceptions. As the discussion expanded into a fascinating exploration of sensory experience across different species, Tyler noticed something unexpected. The king had entered the chamber and was observing the gathering with interest, his eyes glowing purple with undisguised curiosity. When there was a natural pause in the conversation, the king approached. The room fell silent as everyone bowed deeply. Father, Zarek said, recognizing the king's distinctive footsteps. I hope the reception meets your expectations. It has exceeded them in unexpected ways, the king replied, his voice deep and resonant. Counselor Nevin's integration of multisensory elements has been particularly well received by our guests. A thoughtful innovation, Zarek agreed. One that makes our cultural heritage more accessible to a diverse audience. The king was silent for a moment, studying his son with an intensity that made Tyler uncomfortable. Then, to everyone's surprise, he said, I would value your assessment of the diplomatic discussions this evening, Zarek. Your perspective may offer insights others have missed. It was the first time in years that the king had publicly acknowledged his third son's intellectual capabilities. Zarek maintained his composure, but Tyler could see the slight tremor in his hands that betrayed his emotion. I would be honored to provide my observations, Father, he replied evenly. The king nodded. Join me in my study tomorrow morning. Bring your human attendant if you wish. His observations may complement your own. With that, the king departed, leaving a wake of astonished courtiers behind him. Zarek stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable, but Tyler could sense the profound impact of this small acknowledgement. Later that night, as Tyler helped Zarek prepare for bed, the prince finally spoke of the encounter. 10 years, he said quietly. It's been 10 years since my father asked for my opinion on matters of state. He's finally seeing what I saw from the beginning, Tyler replied. That your different perspective is valuable, not limiting. Perhaps, Zarek said thoughtfully. Or perhaps he's simply responding to changing attitudes at court. Either way, it represents progress I had almost stopped hoping for. What will you tell him tomorrow? The truth, as I perceive it, Zarek answered. That our empire's insistence on uniformity and perfection is becoming a weakness in an increasingly diverse galaxy. That adaptation and inclusion aren't just moral imperatives, but strategic necessities. Tyler smiled. He might not be ready for quite that much truth. Then it's fortunate I've had practice and patience, Zarek replied with a small smile of his own. The meeting with the king the next morning marked a turning point. While no dramatic announcements followed, subtle changes began to ripple through the court. Prince Zarek was included in more official functions, his opinions sought on various matters, particularly those involving relations with the more diverse Commonwealth worlds. Lord Vexer remained opposed to these changes, but his influence seemed to wane as the king himself endorsed his third son's more visible role. The Chamberlain was forced to adapt his approach, focusing on ensuring that Zarek's appearances were managed properly rather than prevented entirely. For Tyler, these changes brought a deep sense of satisfaction. He continued to serve as Zarek's eyes, but increasingly found himself acting more as companion than caretaker. The prince relied on him not just for descriptions of the visual world, but for his uniquely human perspective on court politics and cultural nuances. You've accomplished more than I could have imagined, Marek told Tyler one evening as they watched Zarek engaged in animated conversation with a group of young nobles. When you first arrived, the prince spent most of his time alone in his chambers. Now look at him. He did this himself, Tyler insisted. I just helped him navigate the logistics. Marek's eyes glowed green with amusement. You did far more than that, young human. You saw him when others wouldn't. Sometimes that's all anyone needs to find their own strength. As Tyler's year of service approached its final months, a bittersweet realization settled over him. He had grown deeply attached to Zarek and to his role in the Tavonian court. The thought of returning to Earth, of leaving the prince without someone who truly saw him, weighed heavily on his mind. Zarek, perceptive as always, sensed Tyler's melancholy. Something troubles you, he observed one day as they walked through the palace gardens. Your descriptions have been less detailed of late, your voice less animated. Tyler sighed. My term in the ambassador program ends in 6 weeks. I've been trying not to think about it. Ah, Zarek said softly. I had not forgotten, but I find I've been avoiding the subject as well. They walked in silence for a moment, the gentle sound of the garden fountains filling the space between them. You've changed my life, Tyler, Zarek finally said. Before you came, I existed in isolation, accepted my relegation to the shadows as inevitable. You helped me find a voice and a place at court that I never thought possible. You always had that voice, Tyler replied. You just needed someone to listen. And now others listen too, Zarek agreed. But I find I still value your perspective above all others. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. I've spoken with Ambassador Chun about the possibility of extending your assignment. There are precedents for such arrangements when both parties agree they're beneficial. Tyler's heart leaped. You want me to stay? If you wish to, Zarek replied. I understand you have family on Earth, a life to return to. I would not presume. Yes, Tyler interrupted. I mean, I need to talk to my mom, but yes, I'd like to stay. Zarek's face broke into a genuine smile, the kind Tyler had rarely seen in their early days together. Then we shall make the arrangements. Not as prince and servant, but as equal partners in diplomatic and cultural exchange. The ambassador was quite taken with the idea of formalizing a permanent human advisory position within the Tavonian court. Tyler felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had found his place here, helping bridge the gap between human adaptability and Tavonian tradition, between seeing with eyes and perceiving with other senses. The news of Tyler's extended appointment spread quickly through the palace. Most received it positively, seeing it as further evidence of improving relations between Earth and the Tavonian Empire. Lord Vexer, predictably, was less enthusiastic, but even he had come to recognize that the partnership between the blind prince and his human attendant had brought unexpected benefits to the royal house. On the day that would have marked the end of Tyler's original assignment, a special dinner was held to celebrate the formal establishment of his new diplomatic role. The event was held in the grand dining hall, but unlike the isolation of Zarek's early meals, they were seated at the main royal table, surrounded by supporters and allies they had gained over the months. As Tyler described the scene to Zarek, the decorations, the attendees, the subtle interplay of glowing eyes revealing the emotional undercurrents of the court, he reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a simple act of kindness towards someone in need had transformed into something much more profound, a partnership that was changing an ancient empire's perceptions, one meal at a time. The king and queen have just entered, Tyler narrated quietly. The king's eyes are glowing blue, calm and content. The queen, her eyes are green, Zarek. I've never seen her express pleasure so openly before. Times change, Zarek replied with satisfaction. Even in an empire as ancient as ours, sometimes all it takes is a different way of seeing. As the celebration continued around them, Tyler thought about the strange journey that had brought him here, from a grieving boy seeking escape on Earth to a cultural bridge between worlds. He had come to help a blind alien prince navigate meals, but in the process had become his eyes to a changing universe, one where differences were not weaknesses but gifts offering new ways of perceiving reality. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.